Bangkok is a city where secrets hide in plain sight, sometimes behind neon lights, sometimes beneath tired eyes, and sometimes in the front seat of a tuk-tuk or taxi weaving through traffic. But no one ever imagined that one of the city's most ordinary taxi drivers carried a secret powerful enough to rewrite everything people assumed about wealth, humility, and true purpose. His name was Somchai Watanakal, a middle-aged man with worn hands, gentle eyes, and a smile that blended kindness with mystery. And for years, he lived two lives, one everyone saw, and one no one ever suspected. To most passengers, Somchai looked like any hardworking Thai taxi driver trying to survive Bangkok's relentless hustle. His cab was old but immaculate, the seats patched but clean, and the faint smell of jasmine came from an air freshener hanging from the dashboard. He knew the shortcuts through Siloam, the early morning quiet of Sukhumvit, and the chaotic evenings near Pratunam. He chatted when passengers wanted to talk and stayed silent when they preferred their thoughts. Nothing about him screamed millionaire. But that's because Somchai understood something most people never do. Real wealth doesn't always wear luxury. The truth was hidden in a small, locked drawer in his modest apartment in Nonthaburi. Inside were documents that would shock anyone who saw them: property deeds, share certificates, and bank statements with numbers too large for a taxi driver's paycheck to explain. Somchai was worth more than 72 million baht, over $2 million US. But he still woke up at 4:30 each morning, prayed, brewed cheap instant coffee, and headed out to drive strangers across the city. People often asked why. Somchai always smiled softly and said, "Some stories are not as simple as they look." Somchai's story began far from wealth. He grew up in a struggling home barely held together by hope and his mother's resilience. His father, who battled severe alcoholism, was unpredictable, loving one moment, violent the next. Somchai learned early that survival depended on reading people, anticipating their moods, and staying gentle even when life wasn't. His mother sold fried bananas on the street, and little Somchai helped after school. He understood hardship not as a phase, but as a constant companion. Poverty shaped him, but it did not define his future. It only taught him how much he wanted to escape it. At 17, when his father died suddenly, Somchai became the head of the family. He dropped out of school, took odd jobs, and eventually learned to drive. His first job was as a delivery driver for a small food company. It didn't pay much, but he treated every shift like it mattered. He saved every baht he could, avoided unnecessary spending, and constantly looked for ways to grow. Yet even then, he never imagined he would one day become a millionaire. Wealth wasn't his dream, stability was. But fate had a way of rewarding those who stayed patient and persistent. His life changed when he became a taxi driver in the early 1990s. Bangkok was growing fast, and driving a cab meant meeting people from every corner of the city: tourists, business executives, monks, celebrities, and sometimes people who carried stories heavier than their luggage. One of those passengers was Ainan Kittapong, a soft-spoken elderly man Somchai picked up near Hua Lamphong Station. Ainan was polite, observant, and strangely curious about Somchai's life. Their conversation lasted barely 20 minutes, but something about Somchai's sincerity made an impression Ainan never forgot. Over the next few months, Somchai coincidentally picked up Ainan several times. Each ride turned into a heartfelt conversation about life, work, dreams, and the quiet weight of responsibilities. Ainan learned that Somchai supported his mother, younger sister, and occasionally his cousins. He worked long hours but never complained. One day, Ainan finally revealed something surprising. He owned several old properties in emerging parts of the city and struggled to manage them alone. He asked Somchai a question that felt almost unreal: "Would you help me take care of them? I trust you more than people I've known for years." Somchai could have refused. The offer seemed too generous, too sudden, almost suspicious. But something about Ainan felt genuine. So he agreed. What followed was the most unexpected mentorship of his life. Ainan taught Somchai about property management, tenant relations, investment timing, and the importance of patience in real estate. Somchai absorbed everything like dry land soaking up rain. He visited the properties, collected rents, handled repairs, and managed documents meticulously. To him, it was just another job, one he performed with loyalty. But to Ainan, it was preparation for something far greater. Years passed, and Somchai continued driving his taxi while managing Ainan's properties part-time. He never asked for extra pay or favors. He believed trust was more valuable than money. Meanwhile, Bangkok's economy evolved rapidly. Old residential neighborhoods transformed into prime commercial zones. Small apartments doubled, then tripled in value. Ainan's properties quietly became gold mines. But the biggest surprise came when Ainan fell ill. On his hospital bed, he called Somchai and said, "Everything I own will one day need a protector. Someone honest. Someone who won't destroy what took decades to build. That person is you." Somchai shook his head in disbelief. "I'm just a taxi driver," he whispered. But Ainan smiled weakly. "No, Somchai. You are the most trustworthy person I have met in my entire life." When Ainan passed away, his will shocked everyone, especially Somchai. He had inherited a major portion of the old man's assets: apartments, shops, a warehouse, and undeveloped land parcels. The total value was staggering. Lawyers confirmed everything was legal and correctly documented. Somchai became a multi-millionaire overnight. Yet instead of celebrating, he wept quietly. He felt the weight of responsibility more than the thrill of wealth. Somchai could have abandoned his taxi instantly, bought a luxury car, moved to a richer district, or traveled the world. But none of that appealed to him. Wealth, he believed, was only meaningful when used properly. And he wasn't ready to change his life overnight. So he made an unusual decision. He continued driving his taxi like nothing had changed. His neighbors didn't know. His passengers didn't know. Even his extended family didn't know. Only his mother and sister were aware. He told them, "Money should not change who we are. Let it change only what we can do for others." Somchai invested carefully, using Ainan's teachings as his guide. He renovated a few old buildings, rented them to young entrepreneurs at affordable prices, and watched the income grow steadily. He avoided flashy spending and instead focused on increasing long-term value. Over time, his fortune grew, but his lifestyle remained simple. He still ate street noodles for lunch, still wore faded shirts, and still greeted every passenger with the same gentle smile. He felt grounded behind the wheel. Driving reminded him where he came from and why gratitude mattered more than luxury. But secrets can't stay hidden forever. His double life was exposed on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon during a sudden Bangkok downpour. Somchai picked up a reporter named Naiporn Riksada, who happened to be investigating unusual real estate owners in the city. She recognized Somchai's name from a land registry document she'd been studying. At first, she thought it was coincidence, a common name. But when Somchai mentioned Nanthaburi and unknowingly aligned too many details, her curiosity sharpened. "Are you the same Somchai who owns 3 buildings near Bang Rak?" she asked gently. Somchai froze. He didn't like lying, so he admitted the truth quietly, hoping she would keep it private. But Naiporn was a journalist with a strong sense of responsibility. She didn't publish the story immediately. Instead, she spent days trying to understand why a wealthy man would still drive a taxi. Eventually, she requested an interview, not to expose him, but to give him a chance to share his philosophy with the world. "People need to hear stories that restore faith in goodness," she told him. After deep thought, he agreed. When the story was finally published, it spread across Thailand like wildfire. Headlines screamed, "Humble taxi driver is secret property millionaire." Social media exploded with admiration and disbelief. Some people thought it was inspiring. Others thought it was unbelievable. And a few criticized him, questioning why a wealthy man would take work from struggling drivers. Somchai remained calm. He explained in interviews, "I don't drive because I need money. I drive because it keeps me connected to life, to people, and to the humility that built my journey." After the article went viral, Somchai's life shifted overnight. Passengers who once ignored him now stared curiously, whispering his name. Some entered his taxi just to ask philosophical questions, hoping to extract wisdom from a man who had chosen simplicity over luxury. Somchai remained gentle through the sudden attention, though it overwhelmed him at times. When asked why he didn't retire, he simply replied, "If I stop being part of ordinary life, I may forget the things that matter. Driving helps me stay grateful for every blessing I never expected." But along with admiration came unexpected discomfort. Some relatives who had barely spoken to Somchai began calling him, asking for money or investments. Others hinted at business ventures they wanted him to fund. The pressure grew subtly, creeping into his everyday life like humidity in the Bangkok air. Somchai refused to harbor resentment. Instead, he offered help only in meaningful ways, paying medical bills, supporting children's education, and giving small opportunities rather than cash. He believed giving people money without purpose stole their motivation. So he helped responsibly, guided by compassion rather than guilt. Somchai's mother saw the emotional weight he carried and pleaded with him to slow down. But he shook his head gently. "Mother, I am not tired of driving. I'm tired of people forgetting why we're alive." She didn't fully understand, yet she respected his values. To her, he was still the son who woke early, greeted her with a polite bow, and treated every human being with sincerity. She feared fame might change him, but his eyes remained calm, almost serene. Somchai had learned long ago that true peace comes not from wealth, but from purpose. One evening, Somchai picked up a young foreign backpacker named Lily who had just lost her wallet. She was tearful, shaken, and embarrassed. Without hesitation, Somchai drove her to her hostel, paid for her room, and gave her enough money for food. "Pay me back only when life brings you comfort again," he said kindly. She stared at him in disbelief. "Why would you trust a stranger?" He smiled softly. "Because strangers helped me once. Kindness moves in circles." That night, Lily posted her encounter on social media, and thousands shared it, calling Somchai the soul of Bangkok. Despite the praise, Somchai's heart remained anchored to quiet gratitude. He continued investing in community projects, fixing old playgrounds, donating books to underfunded schools, and sponsoring local scholarships anonymously. He never sought recognition. It was enough for him to know lives were improving, even slightly. He often repeated his favorite lesson from Anan: "A fortune is only meaningful when it moves beyond your hands." Those words shaped every decision he made. Somchai believed that giving wasn't about easing guilt, it was about preserving humanity. But one person's life changed more than anyone else's: his younger sister, Molly. She had always dreamed of becoming a nurse but dropped out due to financial struggles. Without telling her, Somchai enrolled her in a reputable nursing school and paid all expenses up front. When he revealed it, she broke into tears, gripping his hands tightly. "Why me, brother?" she whispered. He answered with a trembling voice, "Because you spent your childhood caring for Mother and me. It's time someone cared for your dreams." That moment became one of the most emotional turning points of his journey. Still, Somchai wrestled with an internal conflict. Fame, something he never sought, was slowly chipping away at his anonymity. Passengers expected wisdom from him. Journalists approached him for inspirational quotes. People online debated his choices as if they owned a story. Some even accused him of inventing the entire narrative. The pressure was exhausting. One night, while driving along the quiet riverbank of Chao Phraya, he parked his taxi, rested his head on the steering wheel, and whispered to himself, "I never wanted to be a symbol. I only wanted to be a good man." But destiny had a way of leading him where he was needed. A few weeks later, Somchai met a troubled teenager named Arun who entered his taxi with a bruised face and trembling hands. Somchai sensed something was wrong. Through soft questions and warm listening, Arun revealed he was running from an abusive home and had nowhere to go. Somchai didn't hesitate. He drove the boy to a safe youth shelter he supported discreetly. Before leaving, he placed a comforting hand on Arun's shoulder and said, "Your story does not end in fear. You deserve a future that feels safe." That night, Somchai realized something important. The world didn't need him to be a millionaire. It needed him to be present, human, compassionate. These were the qualities that made people believe again. So he leaned fully into that purpose. Instead of avoiding the spotlight, he used it to highlight issues affecting ordinary Thai families: lack of affordable housing, youth homelessness, and the invisible struggles of low-wage workers. His voice, soft yet sincere, began influencing public conversations more than he ever expected. Still, Somchai never allowed himself to feel superior. Whenever praise overwhelmed him, he returned to the first apartment he and his mother lived in decades ago, now abandoned and nearly collapsing. He would sit inside for a few minutes, inhaling the dusty air, remembering the nights he cried quietly after long shifts, the mornings he skipped meals so his sister could eat, and the years when life felt like an endless cycle of struggle. He kept that memory alive intentionally. It reminded him why he promised never to let money erase humility. One rainy evening, a young mother entered his taxi carrying her sick toddler. She was panicking, unable to afford the clinic fee. Without hesitation, Somchai drove them to a hospital and insisted she take his envelope of cash. When she asked for his name so she could repay him, he simply said, "Just tell your son someday that a stranger believed he deserved a healthy life." Weeks later, that story spread across Thai social media, inspiring people to share kindness more openly. Somchai's quiet acts had begun creating a ripple far larger than he ever imagined. But not all reactions were positive. Some accused Somchai of using generosity to gain attention. Others insisted he had responsibility to donate all his wealth instantly. The criticisms hurt him, not because they questioned his choices, but because they misunderstood his heart. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He was simply living the values that shaped him. One evening, he told his mother, "No matter what people say, I will not let bitterness grow inside me. A clean heart is more valuable than any fortune." Somchai's emotional turning point arrived at a charity event where he was invited to speak. Standing before hundreds of people, he felt his voice tremble. He admitted he had struggled with the pressure of being seen, judged, admired, and criticized. Then he said something that silenced the entire room. "I am not wealthy because of money. I am wealthy because life gave me pain, and that pain taught me compassion. If we use our blessings to lift even one person, then we honor the struggles that shaped us." His message resonated deeply. People approached him afterward, not with praise, but with tears, confessions, and gratitude. They shared their own burdens, childhood traumas, and financial struggles. Somchai listened to every story like it was a sacred responsibility. That day, he finally understood his purpose wasn't tied to wealth. His purpose was to be a reminder that goodness still existed in a world that often felt harsh. He walked away feeling lighter, as if he had finally stepped into the role destiny quietly prepared for him. But Somchai's greatest contribution wasn't public, it was personal. He began mentoring young taxi drivers who struggled with debt and exhaustion. He taught them budgeting techniques, saving habits, and simple investment strategies. He didn't hide his wealth. Instead, he used it to teach them what he learned from Anan. Many drivers started improving their finances, slowly escaping the cycle of poverty. Seeing their progress gave Somchai a joy deeper than any material possession ever could. He realized that sharing wisdom was far more powerful than sharing money alone. One of the drivers he mentored, a young father named Niran, eventually paid off his debts and opened a small food stall. When he invited Somchai to the opening, he hugged him tightly and whispered, "You didn't just change my finances, you changed my life." Somchai smiled, humbled. It wasn't the praise that moved him, it was the knowledge that he had played a small role in restoring someone's dignity. Helping people reclaim their pride became one of the most fulfilling parts of his journey. Despite his growing influence, Somchai still faced moments of loneliness. Wealth created distance between him and people who once shared his struggles. Some treated him like a saint, others like an ATM, and a few like a curiosity. Sometimes, after dropping off his last passenger, he would sit in the quiet darkness of his taxi and whisper, "I hope I'm doing enough." What he didn't realize was that his humility, precisely this vulnerability, was what made him so deeply inspiring to those who followed his story. One unexpected friendship blossomed from a simple taxi ride. An elderly woman named Dao, who had recently lost her husband, entered Somchai's taxi in tears. Instead of asking questions, he played soft instrumental music and let her speak when she was ready. She told him about her loneliness, her fear of aging alone, and her dwindling savings. Somchai began visiting her weekly, bringing groceries, helping her manage bills, and simply sitting with her so she wouldn't feel invisible. Their bond became a living example of the emotional wealth that grows from compassion. Dao eventually told Somchai, "You remind me of my husband, not because of what you have, but because of who you are." Those words struck him deeply. He realized people didn't admire him for his fortune, they admired him for his heart. And that was something he had built long before he inherited a single property. Somchai walked away from Dao's home that day with tears in his eyes. more convinced than ever that emotional connection was the greatest currency he possessed. As Somchai's story spread internationally, tourists visiting Bangkok began searching for him, not to take pictures, but to experience his kindness firsthand. Some left letters on his taxi seat. Others brought small gifts. One mother wrote, "You restored my son's faith in people after a terrible year." Somchai kept these notes in a wooden box at home. On difficult days, he opened it and read them slowly, reminding himself that even the smallest act of kindness could brighten someone's darkest moment. Over time, Somchai used part of his wealth to fund a community center offering free financial literacy classes, emotional support circles, and career counseling for low-income families. He named it the Lantern House, inspired by how lanterns guide travelers in the dark. Everyone who walked inside felt welcomed, regardless of their background. Somchai visited regularly, sometimes teaching, sometimes just listening. Seeing people heal and grow brought him a sense of fulfillment no car, house, or luxury item could ever match. Through all of this, Somchai never abandoned his taxi. It wasn't just a vehicle, it was his bridge to the world. He believed that if he stopped driving, he would lose touch with ordinary humanity, and he refused to let wealth isolate him. Each passenger represented a new chance to understand life from another angle. Whether they were heartbroken lovers, exhausted workers, hopeful travelers, or lost souls seeking direction, Somchai treated them all with the same quiet respect that had defined him since childhood. One afternoon, he picked up a wealthy businessman who insisted on giving him a large tip. When Somchai declined, the man scoffed, "Why refuse money? Don't you drivers always need it?" Somchai replied gently, "Money is useful, but it should not decide our dignity." The businessman was stunned. He later discovered Somchai's true identity online and returned to apologize. "You taught me humility in 10 minutes, he said. Somchai simply smiled. Lessons, he believed, did not require long speeches, just sincerity. As years passed, his story became a symbol of hope across Thailand. Schools shared his journey to teach students about gratitude. Social workers referenced him in workshops on compassion. Taxi drivers across Bangkok spoke of him with respect. Yet Somchai never let the admiration get to his head. When asked why he never moved into a mansion, he replied, "Because happiness fits comfortably into small spaces." His simple apartment remained his sanctuary, filled with modest furniture, plants, and framed photos of those he had helped. However, Somchai still carried a quiet sadness. He had never married. Not because he lacked opportunities, but because he spent much of his life caring for others. He once confided to a close friend, "Love always felt like a luxury for people with easier lives." But destiny had another surprise. One evening, he picked up a woman named Natanika, a volunteer counselor. Their conversation flowed naturally, gentle, healing, and sincere. She admired his kindness, while he admired her strength. Over months, they became inseparable, bound by shared compassion. For the first time, Somchai felt seen not as a millionaire or a humble driver, but simply as a man capable of loving and being loved. Their relationship blossomed slowly, built on understanding rather than attraction alone. When he eventually proposed, he did it not with extravagance, but with vulnerability. "I have wealth, but I want to build a life rich in peace with you," he whispered. Tears filled her eyes as she said yes. Their wedding was simple, intimate, and attended mostly by people whose lives Somchai had touched. Marriage deepened his commitment to compassion. Together, he and Natanika expanded the Lantern House, creating mental health support programs, youth mentorship groups, and workshops for struggling single mothers. They funded everything quietly, without seeking sponsorships or recognition. Their dream was simple: to protect the humanity that often gets lost in the noise of survival. Somchai often said, "I don't want my wealth to outlive me. I want its impact to outlive all of us." Despite all his accomplishments, Somchai's defining trait remained his ability to listen without judgment. One late night, a drunk man slumped into his taxi and began crying about losing his job. Instead of lecturing him, Somchai offered silent comfort, then bought him warm food and arranged a ride home. The man later found him again to repay the kindness. "You treated me like a human when I felt worthless," he said. Moments like these reminded Somchai that emotional generosity was just as powerful as financial generosity. As Somchai aged, he reduced his driving hours but never fully stopped. He enjoyed sunrise drives through empty Bangkok streets, appreciating the peaceful rhythm of a city not yet awake. He often reflected on his journey, how a poor boy with no opportunities became a millionaire, not through greed but through unexpected trust and steadfast humility. Whenever people asked how he stayed grounded, he answered, "I never forgot the nights when I had nothing. Gratitude keeps me steady." Eventually, Somchai decided to write a book, not about wealth, but about the emotional lessons life had taught him. He titled it The Road to Enough. The book touched millions, becoming a quiet bestseller. Readers said it felt like having a gentle friend guiding them through life storms. Somchai donated all profits to educational charities, explaining, "If wisdom can travel across generations, then so can compassion." Toward the end of his career, Somchai received an award recognizing his impact on Thai society. Standing on stage, he looked humbly at the audience and said, "Please don't see me as special. I am only a reflection of what we all can be when kindness becomes our compass." The audience stood in applause, not for a millionaire, but for a man who had proven that greatness often hides behind ordinary appearances. In his final years of driving, Somchai turned his focus toward nurturing younger leaders in the community. He believed every generation needed people who understood empathy beyond words. He often told them, "The world doesn't need more wealthy people, it needs more good people." His wisdom shaped countless lives, helping youth navigate the emotional struggles of modern society. Through them, his legacy began to spread further than he ever imagined. When Somchai eventually passed away peacefully in his sleep, the news shook Thailand. Thousands attended his funeral: taxi drivers, students, single mothers, elderly neighbors, journalists, tourists he once helped, and complete strangers who felt touched by his story. Many said they felt as if they had lost a mentor. Others wept, realizing they never met him but were changed by him nonetheless. Thailand had not just lost a man, it had lost a lighthouse of hope. Somchai revealed one final act of generosity. He donated a large portion of his wealth to the Lantern House, ensuring its programs would continue long after his death. He also left funds dedicated to scholarships, youth shelters, and medical aid for struggling families. But perhaps the most touching part was the simple handwritten note he left behind. "Money fades. Kindness echoes. If my story has helped you, then please help someone else." That is how we keep the light alive. Today, Somchai is remembered not as the millionaire taxi driver, but as a man who proved that true wealth is measured in heartbeats, not bank accounts. His legacy continues to inspire people across the world to live simply, give generously, and love without hesitation. And in the busy streets of Bangkok, where taxis weave through endless traffic, many drivers still whisper his name with pride. Because Somchai showed that greatness can sit behind the wheel of an old taxi, offering rides to strangers, one act of compassion at a time. Thanks for watching.